Hello everyone, welcome back to Make a Website Lessons on Codecademy. So in the last lesson we were looking at how to make our site more interactive by adding images or videos, and so that the viewer or the visitor can click on them and watch them, because that's more interesting than just having text on your website. Today we're going to be looking at other elements such as div and lists, ordered and unordered hopefully, and also because we're going to be looking at div, we might also be looking at CSS. So let's get started. Impressive, with just 5 page elements you've already created an interesting website. So if you haven't checked out the last 2 videos, then I would recommend that you do. And also I would recommend watching my HTML series, because that would help you out in understanding what is going on better. So another essential HTML element is the unordered list. Items in an unordered list are referred to as list items. So each item is bulleted, not numbered. And if it was an ordered list, then it would be numbered. So for example, a list item, a second list item, a third list item, the HTML code for this list would look something like this. And if you wanted to make it ordered, then you just, instead of the U here, you put an O. About unordered lists. So you have UL tags create the unordered list. LI tags contain each list item. Unordered list elements can be used to organize content on a web page in a number of ways. So it really depends on your preference whether you use lists or not. You don't have to, you can just use paragraphs, but sometimes it looks better to use lists than paragraphs. So below we will use one to organize our website's navigation menu, sometimes called a navbar. Fair enough, because it's usually like one bar that is your menu. And instructions, so let's see what we need to do to get this lesson out of the way. Our navigation bar will go above the company heading H1 element, so let's find that. That's there, and on our website it's here. So first we will need to create some new lines. In index.html, so the tab that we are on, press enter to create several new lines between body and H1. So between the body and H1 tags, there we go. First we will create an H2 or heading 2 element to serve as the heading for the navigation bar. The text can read Ollie. Okay. And closing tag. I do recommend putting an opening and closing tag before you put anything in between the tags, because it happens that you usually forget at the end to put the closing tag and you won't know what's actually going wrong. Click run to continue. Good, that worked fine, and now we can see like a heading 2 above our heading 1. But that's fine, we will be changing that up to be our navbar. Below the navbar H2, create an unordered list element. So we want UL, lowercase, and again /UL to close it. Then in between we want LI elements. And I will copy these just so that I don't have to write them out each time. The list items will be different pages a site user can visit. So we have sign up, then we have search bikes. Oops, that's not how you spell search bikes. Reserve a bike, and about us. Okay, after you insert all of the list items, don't forget to close the unordered list with a closing /UL tag, which I have already done, and hopefully you also have. And click run to view the results in the browser. There we go. So now what we're probably going to do is link them up to something by using the anchor element, hopefully. So with the video and our unordered list elements, you may have noticed something interesting. These HTML elements had other HTML elements nested inside of them. So for example, in unordered list, LI elements are nested inside the UL. So you have an element, the main element, the UL element, and then you have a sub-elements, the LI element. Also, if you noticed from before, a bigger thing like that is everything that's inside the body is nested, well, inside the body, and they are kind of sub-elements to the body. And then you also have like a sub element to the body, the li. Okay, let's move on. So web developers refer to the enclosing element as the parent element and the enclosed element as children. So the UL would be the parent element, and the li would be the child element. You might have also heard about that in programming when you're working with classes. You can kind of think of this as classes as well, but because it's web development, it's still slightly different. So referring to HTML elements as parents and children may sound funny, but it's a core web development concept. The web browser also knows about these parent-child relationships, which will be important as we explore CSS in the next lesson. So that comes next, okay? In the diagram to the right, notice the following. The UL element is the parent of each LI. So UL is parent of LI, and the LI are children of UL, as I said before. Code indentation signifies the relationship between parent and child elements. So even though you don't have to indent them inside to signify that it's a child element, it's better to do it that way, because if somebody is looking through your code, then they will understand better that they are actually inside the UL element. Because for example here, if you had a massive list that goes from like here to even you had to scroll down, then it would be much better if you had indentation here to signify that it's a child element than if you didn't, because somebody would more easily understand that that's a child element and then look what it's a child element of. And it's just, and if you're coming back to fix something, then you can more easily fix it. So after you have familiarized yourself with the diagram, click next to continue the lesson. Now that we know about HTML elements, nesting and parent-child relationships, let's see another way these concepts are applied on a real-life web page. So div elements divide your page by enclosing other elements. These enclosed groups of elements can be then organized, moved and styled independently from one another. The div elements are often used with the class attribute. So here's an example. Div, and then you give that specific div a certain class, and then when we cover CSS, you will find out what class actually, why and how it works. But for now, just remember that divs are usually used with a class or sometimes an ID. It depends. So the ellipsis indicates where other HTML elements would normally be enclosed by the div. So there can be anything in there, doesn't matter, it's just a part of your website in there. Below we will use our divs to divide our page into 3 separate parts. So from here we can see one of our page divisions would be the navbar, the other one would be, I don't know, description with title, and maybe the third one would be the video, for example. Or you can divide it differently. You can have the title as one element, you can have the description and video as another, and the navbar as a third. Depends on your preference, but let's see how they want us to do it. So first we will enclose all the elements between body in a div element with a class attribute of container. So let's do that. Div open and div close. Oops, I did not mean to delete that. Div close. And class, class equals, without any spaces, we want class to equal container. So now that we have our div elements, let's move on by clicking on run. Okay, next we will enclose the navbar h2 and ul in another div and give it a class attribute of nav, or navigate, I guess. You can use the code below as a guide. So we want to put a division on this div element, or on the navbar. Div open, and then we want to close it here, /div, but this div is going to have a class of nav. And things should change slightly now. There we go. So now this got its own little background. As you noticed, the background became yellow. That can be explained by CSS, but I'm not going to go into that in this video because I'm pretty sure that they're going to explain it in following up lessons. In followed up lessons, I don't really know what the term is there. Finally, enclose the company H1, the H3, paragraph and video elements inside a third div with the class attribute of main. So H1 and H3, we want to have it as div with class equals, and we want their class to be main, and we just want these two elements to be here, so /div, and those should change once we press run. There we go. They did kind of change, but let's see what we completely need to do. So oh, paragraph and video, so that's not all we need to do. We need to enclose everything else that is left in this div. Is that going to be fine? Hopefully. So there will be a total of 3 divs on the page. The div with the container class contains the divs with the nav and main classes. So we have 2 divs which are children of the container div. So we have one nav div, one main div, both of which are children of the container div. Okay, click run. The file main.css contains CSS styling for the container, nav and main classes. So that is basically telling the website how it should be ordering the classes that have that name. Which enabled page elements to change. If you're curious, explore main.css for fun. We will learn how CSS works later in the course. So just if you guys want to see it, this is its current look. I'm not going to go into it right now, as I said. I'm just going to go next. The last HTML elements we will explore are involved in metadata, whatever, processes. You can think of these elements as the brains of a web page because they communicate vital information to the web browser, but are not visible to the web page visitor. So we have doctype HTML. As you can see, that's at the very start of the page there, or the HTML code. Tells the web browser to expect an HTML document, so you're telling it to prepare to receive an HTML document. Sometimes I know that you can get away without actually giving that in the HTML code. I'm pretty sure that most browsers now don't really care whether you have that or not because they always expect HTML, but to be on the safe side you should always include it. Then you have HTML and closing HTML tags, the root of the HTML document and parent of all other HTML elements on the web page. Again, I think that this might also have a similar thing as this, so even if you don't give it, it might still work, but this is more problematic. So if you don't include it, you might have bigger problems than if you don't include this. And then you have head and body, which are the main parts, but let's see head first. Enclose other metadata about the site, such as its title. So the title is basically what's displayed on the tab. So if you're looking at my mouse right now, this is what the title would be. So the title of this website that I'm on right now would be Make a Website, Pipe Codecademy. So that's what they would have to write in the title section here to have this show up. And then you have meta charset, whatever that is, tells the web browser which character set to use. In this case, the character is set to UTF-8, as you can see there. And our instructions then: identify the HTML, head, title, and meta charset UTF elements, and the doctype declaration. So I already have. There's a doctype declaration: HTML open, HTML close, head open, head close. I actually want to have a space, a blank line in between, and then you have title, title open, title close, and then you have meta, which is a self-closing tag. In addition to the metadata elements described above, you will also notice link. This here. We will learn about the link elements in the next unit, a closer look at CSS. Click next to review the skills learned in this lesson. Congratulations, you've learned enough HTML to create a great website. So let's actually open this up on a whole view just to see what we have made so far. So this is what it actually doesn't look that bad. Although what I would do if I was actually making a website was put an anchor element to each one of these, so that they make them link to somewhere, so that you can actually access About Us, reserve a bike, sign up, search bikes, and those, so that you can actually do those things. But because we are just practicing at the moment, we don't want to do that because there's really no point in doing that, and we still don't know how to link two websites together in a good way. So before we move on to styling with CSS, let's review what we learned in this lesson. Languages, we looked at HTML and we mentioned CSS. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language, HTML, and is used to give a web page structure. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets and is used to style HTML elements. Then you have different HTML elements that we have learned. You have the H1 to H6 tags, so therefore headings, and the H6 and H5, I think we looked at them, they are even smaller than normal text, but if you want to use them you can. The most used ones are H1 and H2, sometimes you might see H3, I haven't, but it depends on how you want it set up. So they indicate text headings on a web page. H1 is the largest heading and H6 is the smallest. Also, we learned how to use paragraph, and is used for non-heading text such as the bodies of articles or company descriptions. Although you can use paragraph, you can also use paragraphs for our heading, because in paragraphs, as we will learn later on, you can change the font size and font style and things like that as well. So you're not really limited to just using heading. And for heading you can still edit the font size even further if you wanted to, the same way that you would do in paragraph, which we will again learn later on. Or if you want to skip ahead, then go watch my HTML and CSS lessons on Codecademy, they will teach you how to do that. Then you have the anchor tag, or A, short for anchor, and used to add links to other web pages. Anchor elements typically have an href attribute, which is the hyperlink in a way. So if this is going to be displayed on the web page, click here, and if you click on click here, then you will be redirected to this website, or web page to be more accurate, which would be codecademy.com. And then this would probably go in a paragraph, so you would see click here to learn how to make a website as one line, and you would see click here to be in blue, and you could click it. IMG used to add an image to a web page. Image elements are self-closing and do not require a closing tag. For some self-closing tags you also might notice that there's a slash at the end. IMG doesn't require that. Video used to add videos to a web page and uses multiple attributes and nested source elements. So it works in a way like IMG, but again it's slightly different. So the source attribute is self-closing, but then you have to enclose it in the video tags, and the video controls the width and height of it, and also you can put controls if you want to, and then inside of it you put the source where to get the video from, because otherwise how does it know what you want there to be. And then we learned about unordered lists, used to create lists on web page and requires li elements inside a UL. If you wanted to, there's also another way actually to make unordered lists. You don't really have to include the UL there, you can just put LIs. And also if you wanted an ordered list, so instead of just having them as bullet points, you would have them as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and so on, you can put OL here instead of UL. Div used to organize HTML elements into different groups, which can be given a class attribute. So div stands for division, and div class equals main. You can give other things class attributes as well, but divs are usually the most common ones that you can see with classes. Then you have something like that. Then we learned about metadata tags, which were the last thing that we learned there. Provide metadata about a web page, so the brains in a way. Web concepts, parent-child elements, used to describe HTML elements that enclose or are enclosed by other elements. So for example, below the UL is the parent, and the li items are the children. These are the children, and then that's the parent. Click up next to start learning about CSS. So that's going to be in the next few videos. We're going to be learning about CSS, so we're going to be getting a bit more advanced in our website making. Hopefully we will learn how to link one web page to another to make it more of a website feel. So until then, guys, please, if you have any questions, do feel free to ask in the comments down below. Like, share, subscribe if you liked the video. If you didn't like it, you know what to do. Dislike it. Tell me in the comments why you disliked it so I can improve for next time. But until that next time, guys, thank you so much for watching and goodbye.